Hey guys, it's Audrey, and today I'm going to be designing a vintage postcard using Procreate, Photoshop, and a little bit of Illustrator. So here we have my final mood boards. This is kind of truncated into different parts of inspiration. This first one here, I have more landscape-based things like the countryside hills, the castles, architecture. And then here in the second one, these are more, I guess, icons of Germany, like the classic felt hat, the beer steins. Then down here we have typography examples. I'm a sucker for black letter typography. Having a modernized version of black letter typography in this could be really cool. I personally love how there's some floral illustration kind of going on here within this serif example and in this black letter example. And in this example, this is more illustration-based inspiration and just kind of capturing the vintage qualities. Almost looks airbrushed or watercolor and almost aged, and I think that will kind of pull those qualities in more in Photoshop with like noise and grain and some slight distressing, and kind of seeing how some of those hues and stuff are kind of toned down towards the end. So this is kind of my North Star here, and we'll get to sketching some thumbnails next. So here I'm sketching in Procreate on a 4x6 canvas, which is a typical postcard size. And typically I would do more than one sketch or more than one concept, but I think this composition kind of encapsulates all the elements that I want it to. So I have like the mountains and some trees, rolling hills, a flowing river, and then here I'm just kind of putting in some placeholder text that I'll go into Illustrator and kind of flesh out a bit more since I can't do black letter calligraphy. So hopefully Illustrator will help me a lot more with that. So now we're going to get into Illustrator. From here, I'm going to make a new document, make it in inches, do 6 inches by 4 inches. And typically, if you were to actually make this for print, you would want to have a 0.125 bleed on all sides. But since I'm just going to keep this digital, I'm not intending to print it. I'm just going to keep it at 6 by 4. Okay. You'll see that fits perfectly to size since I sized it that way in Procreate. I'm going to lower the opacity on this just a little bit so I can kind of see more what I'm doing. I'm going to start with Germany. I think it'd be really cool to incorporate these like folk art floral illustrations within like the thick parts of the letters, so this actually might be not a bad choice. And from here, I'm actually going to create a path. Press P for the pen tool. I'm just going to kind of create a curved path that I can type this word on, and then go to the text options, type on a path tool, and click at the very left side, and then I'll just paste. So something I'm actually going to do off to the side here, I'm just going to copy this Germany here that's already on the path, and I'm going to change some of the fonts just to have options. This isn't necessarily black letter, but I really like the character. It's called Roseford. But you can kind of see like the thickness. There's some very jagged edges here, which kind of has a Germanic quality to it, or European quality to it, which I like. So it's not directly black letter, but I think it could still work within this world that we're kind of creating here with this postcard. I think something light like this to contrast with something like this. It's all about the contrast when it comes to typography. I think this is good. I think this will be a really good template to have in Procreate to kind of draw around and mess with a bit more, draw over, and just manipulate the crap out of it. So you can see that I imported the image of the type that we worked on in Illustrator. I think I should work on the landscape first just to kind of pave the way for the space of the typography and kind of let that be last and let that be the bolder element there. So I'm going to lower the opacity of this a little bit, and I'm going to start just color blocking with some bigger colors. The brush I'm going to be using is actually from Retro Supply Company. I think this pack is the Mr. Marker, and you can kind of see that like there's a really good brush quality there. So I think kind of sticking with this brush and letting that kind of be the unifying illustration look. I'm actually going to put the sketch above all of this so I can see what I'm doing here. So I already have my color palette from the Illustrator file kind of put in here, but we can kind of roll with the punches and improv a little bit on some of these colors. I think something to kind of keep note of is that the foreground's going to be darker typically than the background, just because of haze and fog and atmosphere. and everything, so things that kind of recede in the back will get gradually lighter. And then I'm going to select just that foreground bit there, use my dark green that we used, multiply, start getting some like shadows in and start breaking that up a little bit. You can kind of see if you take away everything, it starts to get that like airbrushed, hand-drawn look, which is awesome. I think now would be a good time to actually start messing with typography just to see how it's going to fit in with everything. I kind of just tend to mix things up as I go. I think, again, for the whole like compositing of everything, both like a vector element of like type and then the painterly look of the actual art itself, to marry those things, I think it takes an extra step like this to really get that type to fit in with the background, if that makes sense. So again, it just depends on like the art direction that you're trying to go for and what you're trying to pull off style-wise. I think that's just something else too that I love more about actually drawing stuff like this out, is that handmade quality that you just don't really get with vector art. I'm gonna see what it looks like too to kind of trace over the cursive type too, the Beverly Drive font. I kind of like that it's a little rough in terms of like the brush and everything, so it actually looks like it was handwritten or hand painted. It's kind of getting somewhere. Kind of start mimicking that folk art look in a way, maybe draw a stem here, stem there. Then I'll use that light green for some leaves. I'm not too mad about it. I think as a base, it's really getting there. Overall, with this last bit of illustration, I'm just trying to add in some detail wherever I see fit, mess with color a little bit, see where those pops of red can really stand out, messing with the typography a bit more and helping it stand out from the background and all of the greens. Overall, I think the softness of the brush that I used for this whole illustration really brings everything together, and now we're going to throw it into Photoshop and add some last minute scratches and dust and just the wear and tear that makes it look like a vintage postcard. And so for a lot of these effects, I used a lot of Retro Supply Company's Photoshop brushes and textures. Personally, this is my favorite part of doing any kind of design, and just having that, again, that hand-tailored look and that vintage distressing and paper tears and ink fading away and all those little things that make it really look aged. So I wanted to show a lot more of that here in the final stages. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is my first YouTube video ever, so I really appreciate you being here and for all the support. I'll be sure to post all of the brushes and different assets that I use down in the description. I hope to see you again next time.